If the New Orleans Saints decide to pass on a quarterback in this year's NFL draft that might get them some bad grades in the short term, but might give them exactly what they need for sustainable long-term success. We got all that and a little bit of lagniappe for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? I am your host, your friend Ross Jackson, New Orleans native, your New Orleans Saints expert and credentialed member of the media covering those New Orleans Saints as a Saints beat writer over at LouisianaSports.net and Saints analyst with WWL TV. And on today's episode of Locked On Saints, we have our 7-round mock draft focused on getting the ball back to the quarterback, focusing on adding weapons for another young passer, but leading off with that young passer not coming from this year's NFL draft. We're going to explore the hypothetical that the New Orleans Saints don't invest in a quarterback in this year's NFL draft. Could you still walk away with a draft haul that you're excited about? That's what we're breaking down in today's episode. We appreciate you very much, as always, for making us your first listen and for being an everydayer here on the show, which is a proud part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by the 2025 Nissan Armada. Stay tuned for the Nissan Armada Player of the Week later on in today's episode. The New Orleans Saints, if they don't love a quarterback, may pass on drafting a quarterback in this year's NFL draft, even with the potential of not having Derek Carr for the 2025 NFL season. I've said it before, I'll say it again. Just because I like Shedeur Sanders and would select Shedeur Sanders at number 9 overall in this year's NFL draft does not mean that the New Orleans Saints love Shedeur Sanders and would draft him at number 9 overall in the NFL draft. So I wanted to explore a scenario in which they do not do that. So we will not be taking a quarterback in this year's draft and instead, or in this mock draft, and will instead be taking a look at how you can build this team elsewhere so that you can plug in your young quarterbacks that are already in the building or potentially look to plug in a future quarterback. I'm not going to get married to the idea of the 2026 draft class because we don't know what the 2026 quarterback class or NFL draft class as a whole is going to look like. But if you like the idea of building around your quarterback and then adding your quarterback, that's what we're going to do in this mock draft. So we're going to lead off here in round 1, pick 9. And with this, and especially with some recent news, I selected for the New Orleans Saints, thinking from their perspective, Tetairoa McMillan, the wide receiver out of Arizona. But wait, Ross, you just did a show last week where you said that you like Jaden Higgins at 40 better than you like Tetairoa McMillan at 9. Sure do. Still do. But no guarantee that Jaden Higgins is going to be there in 40. And because Ross feels that way, doesn't mean that the Saints feel that way. I've also gotten some information around Tetairoa a little bit more. And it doesn't seem like the concerns that are out there are valid enough concerns that will scare a team away. He continues to move up team boards. Teams continue to love him. And he's taking a visit with the New Orleans Saints at some point this week. I think Tetairoa McMillan is very likely in the cloud for the New Orleans Saints when it comes to number 9 overall, if he's there, along with guys like Tyler Warren. We'll see what happens with Will Johnson, who's working out for NFL teams today, the corner out of Michigan, and then, of course, the big defensive tackle, Mason Graham out of Michigan, are all players that have sort of been, let's just say, heavily connected to the New Orleans Saints at pick number 9 overall, and Tetairoa McMillan sounds like he's still in that number. Yes, Tetairoa McMillan was in a video 3 years ago saying that he doesn't watch film by himself. After speaking with more and more NFL personnel, that's not unusual. And I think things have changed for him, from my understanding, over the course of those 3 years. Shocker. Freshmen in college have an ability to grow by the time that they enter an NFL draft. Who'd have thunk? 18 touchdowns over the course of the last 2 years. Some scouts believe that his 2023 tape was actually better representative of who he was in 2024 because of a spring injury that limited him a little bit. And so if his limitations in 2024 still led him to catching 8 touchdown passes and going for over 1,000 receiving yards and being the most dominant wide receiver in college football, then I think you'll roll the dice on that. So it doesn't sound like injuries are a major concern. Just sounds like there was something that was nagging him a little bit throughout that 2024 season, or so people have said. And so therefore, doesn't sound like there's much to be worried about. Now, the Saints could learn more during their visit, during their hosting him, all those other things. Visits are allowed to take place for the next 3 days, today, tomorrow on Tuesday, and then the last day is the 16th. And so we'll see, when that visit happens, what other visits follow. But it is interesting watching the New Orleans Saints do so much homework on different wide receivers. They visited with guys like Isaac Tesla. They visited with Ty Felton here recently when they went to the Maryland Pro Day, spent some extra time with him. Ty Felton being this like 6'1", 183-pound yards after catch threat, 590 yards after catch last year. You could see the New Orleans Saints looking to add something like that to their offense. That's not necessarily who Tetairoa McMillan is, but Tetairoa McMillan gives them the big-bodied, go up and get it 50-50 ball type guy. If they like Tetairoa McMillan over Tyler Warren, who was still on the board in this mock draft as I ran the simulator. Interestingly enough, Shedeur Sanders was not. And I'm still not completely convinced that Shedeur Sanders will be on the board for the New Orleans Saints at 9, nor am I super convinced that they're in on him. So we'll see which way things go there. And I think that the next thing you're looking for is how do you build out the rest of the offense, right? And a guy like McMillan helps you be able to kind of balance what you have already at wide receiver. You have Chris Olave, who's got that sub 4.4 speed that is blazing fast and that can run any route in the route tree. You have a guy like Brandon Cooks, whose bread and butter is speed and downfield. Rashid Shaheed, whose bread and butter is speed and getting stuff done downfield. Bub Means, a little bit of both, right? 6'1", 200+ pounds, but also has good speed. You've got some other guys in the room as well, like Cedric Wilson Jr. as well as Dante Pettis, but no guarantee that those guys will be contributors. And so go and get yourself an X receiver that is a dominator. I asked the question the other day, what is it about Jaden Higgins versus Tetairoa McMillan that makes Tetairoa McMillan a top 10 pick, but then has Jaden Higgins over on the outside? And the more that I've asked that question, and I've talked to scouts and I've talked to people, not necessarily within the New Orleans Saints organization, but just elsewhere, a lot of that conversation comes down to, well, Tetairoa McMillan takes over games. And that's something that NFL personnel like around all that. They feel they can, if there are any issues with study habits, that they can fix that. They feel that if there is any issue with a love of the game, which I think is a little bit of that's a different conversation than do you like to watch football? If you like to play football is a very different conversation. I think a lot of us, like what we do for a job, but wouldn't necessarily go and entertain it on the daily basis as a form of entertainment. I get that. I literally lived that life at one point, not in football, but in another field. And so I understand all that. And so there doesn't seem to be the concern around that. And so if there's no concern around that and all you're getting is a dominant X wide receiver, big bodied, box out, 50-50 ball, jump ball, game winner, then yeah, you probably go and get that guy with a top 10 selection at a premium position that helps out your young quarterbacks or any other quarterback that you decide to turn to. I think that that's the kind of guy that you look for. So you give your young quarterback that you plan to turn things over to their best friend in a Tetairoa McMillan. And I will say this shouldn't influence any decisions that are made, but when it comes to Tetairoa McMillan and Spencer Rattler, who could potentially be the duo in 2025, depending on Derek Carr's health and depending on the New Orleans Saints, let's say ongoing investments in the NFL draft at the quarterback position. The two of them come from Arizona. The two of them have worked out together, and the two of them have spent time together. The two of them already have a relationship. And so if you're looking for somebody to get to be your young quarterback's best friend, and you expect that quarterback to be Spencer Rattler in 2025, if you're the New Orleans Saints and you do expect that, then Tetairoa McMillan makes a lot of sense. Coming up next, the New Orleans Saints will need to continue to build the offense around the quarterback if they're not going to take a quarterback. And one great way to do it is to improve the team's run game. That's where we're going to start off as we continue on with this 7-round mock draft here on Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints is brought to you by our friends over at Amazon and the Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K. Did you know that your Amazon Fire TV is also an Xbox? Yeah, you can actually turn your television into an all-around gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe or sign in to your Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. You've got premium titles there like EA Sports College Footballs 25. You'd also dive into Call of Duty, Black Ops, and Avowed, and much more. So if you're somebody that likes and loves an affordable path towards gaming and also portable gaming without having to lug a console around, the Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K is for you. Head over to amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller are required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV 4K Max 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube 3rd generation. All right, family, continuing on with our mock draft here and building the offense around the quarterback. We're going to handle our next two selections here, and then we're going to dive into the defensive side as we wrap up the show. But I want to start off with round 2, pick 40, Ohio State running back, TreVeyon Henderson. TreVeyon Henderson is still one of my favorite running backs in this class. The Ohio State pipeline is back. The New Orleans Saints drafted 5 different Ohio State players between 2015 and 2022. The last Ohio State Buckeye selected in the New Orleans Saints NFL draft was Chris Olave back in 22. You also saw them bring in a bunch of different free agents over the course of that time as well. Ohio State to New Orleans. The pipeline is a Jeff Ireland special, and it's back open for business thanks to Ohio State running back TreVeyon Henderson. I think TreVeyon Henderson is a perfect selection for the New Orleans Saints on 3 different spots, the first of which is wear and tear. The New Orleans Saints typically don't like to take running backs who have seen too many carries throughout their collegiate experience. It's one of the reasons why maybe Ashton Ginty doesn't make as much sense as you would hope that he would at number 9 overall, or maybe some people who aren't anti-running back in the first round, which I get it, I understand. But guys like him and Amarion Hampton coming out of North Carolina, Cam Scatterbo coming out of Arizona State, just a lot of wear and tear. Not so much tread left on the tires there could be the concern. TreVeyon Henderson averaged just over 147 carries in his career per year. 4 seasons over at Ohio State, and finished his career with the amount of carries that some guys get in 2 seasons and half as much time. And he produced like crazy. Despite the fact that he saw that, he still had 10 rushing touchdowns last year and added a few more through the air, by the way, as well, as somebody that can catch passes and run. And also run between the tackles, but also get outside. Has great vision, really nice patience too, which I think is really important at the running back position, allowing blocks to get set up, all those other things. He just kind of takes his time, lets everything develop in front of him, picks and chooses wisely and oftentimes accurately where it is that he needs to go to be able to maximize his carries, and also more than 3 yards after contact per carry, which is a really important stat for me. If you're able to pick up yards after contact, you're helping your team big time. The New Orleans Saints have not had a running back with more than 50 carries get more than 3 yards after contact per carry on average since Mark Ingram back in 2021. He is the last running back that the New Orleans Saints gave more than 50 carries to that saw an average of 3 yards after contact. I'm sorry that I'm emphasizing that so much, but it is so important. If you're a running back, you got to be able to fight through tackles and do all these other things. And for New Orleans, they have not had that piece of their run game as of late. Now, I will give Kendre Miller some credit. Last year and the year before that, he averaged over 3 yards after contact per carry, but did not see more than, I think it was 48 carries was his high, but less than 50 carries, right? So you're really looking for guys that are going to be able to produce that while also touting the football 140, 150 times or more. And so that's the average, all that kind of stuff. Like you want to see that average stay up even with more opportunities. And I don't think that the ship has sailed on Kendre Miller. I just think that there's still a lingering question mark there. Can he stay healthy? Can he stay on the field? And does Kellen Moore's offensive run game end up elevating him in a way that Clint Kubiak's didn't? Remember, when we were going into the season, one of the things that we had constant questions about when it came to Kendre Miller is that he played in an inside zone run heavy system over with the TCU Horned Frogs and had a phenomenal season doing that because of his abilities between the tackles, after contact, all of those other things. All of that translated to the NFL, but when he got here to the NFL and was healthy and on the field for New Orleans, he showed some flashes here and there, but last year in Clint Kubiak's offense, that ball went outside the tackles over 70% of the time, the most in the NFL. So you never really got to see Kendre Miller used in a system that worked for him, right? And Kellen Moore's system will, because it'll be a balance between outside and inside. It'll be a balance between man and zone. It'll be a balance between inside zone and outside zone. And it'll be a balance between what it is that you're looking for on this offense. And so some of that should play a lot more strongly into the hands of Kendre Miller. But you still have to worry about the future of the position post Alvin Kamara, who's on contract through 2026. But you're still looking to see what you can add to your offense there. So Travion Henderson, Kendre Miller, and Alvin Kamara could be a really good trio. Travion Henderson and Kendre Miller could be a really good duo, right? So I think those are the things that you're looking for as well. What are you getting out of the entire rookie contract as somebody that could potentially, during that rookie contract, step into a more featured role in your offense, depending upon what Alvin Kamara's remaining playing career looks like in terms of time, right? Now, you still have Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Jordan Mims, Xavier Valade. You still have these guys that can run for you out of the backfield. But and Taysom Hill was the other name that I was thinking about who can contribute to your run game. But you got Taysom's coming off of injury. We don't know when he's going to be available. And then the other guys are still guys that haven't gotten a lot of opportunity in this offense. Clyde Edwards-Helaire impressed. He was another guy that got over 3 yards after contact per carry last year, but again, did not see 50 carries in 2024. And so you got a lot of question marks back there. So start bringing in players that you know can contribute, and Travion Henderson can absolutely contribute. And the other thing that Travion Henderson helps with, along with his elite acceleration and burst to be able to pull away in the long run game, is also his ability to pass protect. Him as a blitz pickup player in the backfield, phenomenal. He was so good at that area of the game in 2025. And that's not going to show up on a stat sheet. And I get that. But those are the kinds of things that make a running back a 3-down running back, as opposed to just a 3rd-down running back. Those are the kind of things that make a running back a 2nd-round pick, as opposed to a 4th or a 5th-round pick. Those are the things that make NFL scouts like you versus not like you. And he just checked all 3 of those boxes. So I said I was going to name 3 reasons why. I kind of just roped them all together. But his ability in terms of his long speed and his burst, his ability as a pass protector, and then his ability to be able to complement and potentially even grow into a featured role in your offense. So Travion Henderson absolutely checks a bunch of boxes. Can totally see him ending up in New Orleans. Plus, he's an Ohio State Buckeye, and you'd love to see the New Orleans Saints reopen that pipeline because it hasn't gone wrong for them, massively at all. So keep leaning in. And then finally, round 3, pick 71. I'm going back to Tate Ratledge. I don't think I'll ever do another mock draft. I mean, there's only 10 days until the NFL draft begins, but I don't think I'll do another NFL mock draft for the New Orleans Saints without getting Tate Ratledge to New Orleans. He is exactly what you want as a violent player who can run the man run game, but can also move with the zone run game. That's a solid pass protector. It would be somebody that would immediately come in and compete for that starting left guard spot along with guys like Dylan Radins. And so either he ends up starting for you right away, or he becomes major talent in terms of depth for you here in 2025, and then eventually assumes the role beyond that, remembering that Dylan Radins is only on a 1-year contract, and a lot of the other guys that are non-starters in the offensive line right now are also on 1-year deals. And so you end up bringing in somebody that has the extent of their rookie contract to be able to grow, develop, or potentially step in right away. And Tate Ratledge is somebody that I think teams have a lot of faith in to be able to plug in and be a day 1 starter, or at least grow into that starter during early portion of their rookie contract. Coming up next, it's not just about building the offense to help out the quarterback. You want to get the ball back to that offense and keep points off the board. So for our next 3 selections, that's exactly what we're going to do. We got that coming up next as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The Armada Player of the Week is brought to you by our friends at Nissan and the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Each week we're picking players from this year's draft class to be our Players of the Week. And today, I'm going to pick somebody that's not in our mock draft, but could go as high as number 9 to the New Orleans Saints. And that's Michigan cornerback Will Johnson. Lots of question marks around him because of health and speed, but he is on the field today doing a private workout for NFL teams that in an attempt to answer those questions, because otherwise he looks like a starting Pro Bowl caliber, all-pro caliber corner once he gets to the NFL, but he has to answer his medical questions and he has to answer his speed questions. If he could do that, not only could he change his course in the NFL draft, but he could change the New Orleans Saints as well. So certainly somebody that's ready to conquer the road ahead with confidence at this all-important workout. And you can do the same with the Nissan Armada and all their other outstanding Nissan vehicles. Take the Nissan Armada, Rogue, or Pathfinder and go and find your next big adventure today. You can shop today at nissanusa.com. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. If you really want to help a young quarterback, whether it's one that's already in your building or someone that you do draft, you're going to need to not only bolster the talent over on your offensive side of the football, but you're going to need to bolster that defensive talent as well to do two things. One, of course, is get the ball back to your quarterback and that newly bolstered offense. But the other piece is you want to keep points off the board. And so I'm going with three positions that immediately help you do that here as we get into the rest or the next portion of our mock draft, wrapping up round 3, pick 93, and then we'll dive into the rest of this draft as well. But at round 3, pick 93, I went with UCLA edge rusher Oluwafemi Oladejo. Round 4, pick 112, I went with Texas safety Andrew Mukuba. And then round 6, pick 184, I went with University of Texas San Antonio cornerback Za Frazier. So I want to break those three down for the majority of this segment. Then we'll wrap up the rest of this mock draft going back over to the offensive side. Oluwafemi Oladejo is somebody that the Saints have already spent some time with, virtual like these kinds of visits and things like that. And not a top 30 visit in terms of having him at the facility, but have been connected to him over the course of this offseason. And to me, he's one of my favorite edge rushers in this class as a stand-up, on the edge, Leonard Floyd type, Brandon Staley type of edge rusher. And I think his production over the course of the last couple of years shows some positive trends, but his size at 6'2", 6'3", 240-ish pounds just fits that Leonard Floyd outside stand-up edge rusher mold so incredibly well. And somebody that I think if the Saints drafted, they would be able to get a lot out of, thanks to Brandon Staley. We used to write players like Oluwafemi Oladejo off because of the fact that they weren't 6'6", 6'5", 6'7", 270, 280 pounds. We can't do that anymore. This is an entirely new coaching staff that not only, by the way, has a defensive coordinator that uses those stand-up edge rushers, that likes speed and versatility on defense, and that deploys that odd man front type of defense from time to time. They also have not just a defensive line coach, but also an edge coach in Jay Rodgers that ends up being able to come in and help teams build out or help players, build out specific plans for how they fit in the scheme, tailored specifically to what it is that they do. Last year, Todd Grantham and that whole situation was clearly a disaster for the New Orleans Saints defensive line. We've heard it all publicly from Cam Jordan. We've heard it from other sources as well. Things did not go great with Todd Grantham. And one of the reasons that could be the case is, beyond coaching as a whole deficit, right? Is that when you're bringing in an offense or a defense like this, you can't keep that guy around because he's talking to an entire defensive line where your interior defensive linemen might have different responsibilities, or certainly have different responsibilities than your edge rushers based on a different play call and so on and so forth. And so having sort of these more focused coaches and having a guy, especially a guy as good as Bo Davis, coaching your defensive line, but then having somebody in to kind of translate with specificity and focus to the edge rushers, I think is excellent. Oluwafemi Oladejo absolutely can fit into that mold for New Orleans. As for Andrew Mukuba, name it, he does it, right? Can crash down and be a thumper near the line of scrimmage, but also has elite ball production. So we're focused on getting the ball back to the offense and keeping points off the board, right? And Andrew Mukuba helps you do that by taking the ball away and getting it back to the offense. Oluwafemi Oladejo does that by getting after the quarterback and making uncomfortable throws, all those other things. Now, Mukuba probably doesn't see a ton of action in his first season with both Justin Reed and Tyrann Mathieu on the roster, but continues to develop. And again, we're talking about how not taking a quarterback might not get you the best draft grades by media in the short term, but how about your long-term success and sustainability? And if you don't reach for a quarterback that you don't truly believe in, if that is the case for New Orleans, reaching or taking players, you save these draft picks so that you're able to take players like this, that over the course of long-term success, you can develop and build and find that success. And so a guy like Andrew Mukuba, who is kind of like Nick Worry, but not the first round version of him. He's the late day 2, early day 3 version of him. And I'd roll the dice on that because if I could, and if I have the right system, and Brandon Staley's system could be the right one because of the versatility that these safeties are asked to play with, the star role that could be available for him as a downhill disruptor, as well as somebody that can cover and do all these things, reads well, attacks the ball well, makes good plays on the football, all that other stuff. You have a real opportunity to be able to build out some long-term success for a guy like this. And so with that, I think he would be a good fit. Then as we get into round 6, skipping over round 5, obviously no 5th round selection for the New Orleans Saints. I took a player that I'm shocked is still a 6th round projection, which is Frazier, the University of Texas San Antonio corner. Now, I'm going to acknowledge that I have said UTSA, University of Texas San Antonio, now 3 or 4 times. And each time you've cringed. And you know what? Deservedly so. Deservedly so. That, of course, was the college from which one of the biggest draft busts in New Orleans Saints history, Marcus Davenport, hailed. Came from as a roadrunner to the New Orleans Saints. And it did not work. However, you don't stop drafting players from a school because one player was drafted where he shouldn't have been drafted and did not pan out. So, Frazier, I'm not going to rule him out just because he had a roadrunner on his helmet. Here's the deal. 24 combined tackles last year, one of which for a loss, 6 interceptions last season, which led the AAC, 10 passes defended, as well as a fumble forced. This guy is 6'3". He's got long arms. He's got great measurables. He's a press corner through and through, fits the system, fits the attitude, kind of has that Paulson Adebo kind of feel to him because of that physicality that he brings. Remember that Tariq Woolen also came from this school and has been pretty dang successful in his landing spots in the NFL. And so I like a guy like Frazier being able to come and translate to what it is that the New Orleans Saints do. And here's my favorite thing about him. You look over, you dive into all of his advanced metrics, you dive into all his coverage metrics, all this other stuff. 2 career missed tackles, according to Pro Football Focus, for the young corner, who also, by the way, ran 4.36 in the 40-yard dash, jumped 36.5 inches, and jumped a 10'6" broad jump, 9.43 RAS. He feels like a New Orleans Saints defensive back through and through. And so you get another guy that's got good ball production, elite traits, good length, great size for the position, all of that. You get all of that in this player in the 6th round. Absolutely happy to make a selection like that to be able to help to bolster this defense. And again, keep points off the board and get the ball back to that new and improved or building New Orleans Saints offense. Finally, in round 7, I went back to the offensive side, pick 248, Florida wide receiver Elijah Badger. And then at pick 254, went with Iowa State offensive tackle Jalen Travis, both of which a little bit developmental. Elijah Badger gives you some yards after catch threat, which the Saints don't seriously have on offense right now, or haven't for quite some time. The last time that a Saints receiver had over 590 yards after the catch was in 2019, and it was Michael Thomas with 599. You want some yards after catch threats on your team. And then Jalen Travis is somebody that comes in much better pass blocker than a run blocker in terms of great outs and all those other things. Just a developmental player with great size at 6'7" to 330, 340 pounds with some nice movement ability despite that size. But getting another developmental tackle in along with Josiah Aziram just feels like a good, logical thing to do at this point in the draft. So, Tetairoa McMillan, Travion Henderson, Tate Ratledge, Oluwafemi Oladejo, Andrew McCuba, Frazier, Elijah Badger, Jalen Travis. That is our mock draft today. And I feel pretty good about that. You just got to figure out what you're going to do at quarterback next, right? And so you'll see. Is that something, does that feel like a group that builds around the team enough for you to be comfortable going back to Spencer Rattler in 2025, who already is showing that he's ready to take on that role? Or do you feel the need to still grab a quarterback in the midst of all that? Lots of different ways that the New Orleans Saints can go, and that we'll continue to explore. Coming up in tomorrow's episode, I'm sure we'll be getting some information about who was at off-season workouts as they kick off later today. So let's take a little bit of a roll call, see who was there, who wasn't, and why those things might be, which also, by the way, gives us a little bit of information as to why the Derek Carr news broke when it did. We appreciate you very much, as always. for being with us, making us your first listen, and allowing us to be a part of your day, part of your routine, for saying yes to me on the show. If you see me, please say hi. If you need anything else around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, make sure you follow me on your favorite social media at Ross Jackson, NOLA. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing. Let me know how you living. Let me know how you momming them. And trust Who Dat Nation, I'll holla at you.